And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our panel moderator, Samantha Lynch Johnson.
Thank you so much, Leslie, and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or whatever time it is, wherever you are. I want to thank everyone so much for attending, for devoting part of this GAD day for exploring how we can advance DEI. And by DEI, here I mean digital equity and inclusion. And it's by including accessibility skills in your hiring process. Our panelists, our illustrious panelists include Meenakshi, Microsoft software engineer, disability advocate, and changer of worlds. Meenakshi, wave. Cyndi Wiley, accessibility lead, assistant professor of Iowa State, graphic artist, and all-around cat connoisseur. Cyndi, give us a wave. Brittni Wendling, digital accessibility specialist, grad student, and reverend UX game designer. Brittni, give us a wave. And Carrie Farber, who's off camera, but she is the director of accessibility at Walmart eCommerce, disability champion, promoter of disability inclusion in the workplace, and an all-around outdoors person. Hello to Carrie. The way this panel works is that each panelist will provide insight into their experiences with hiring staff and accessibility knowledge and skills in tech and higher education and in the disability community. We'll highlight a bit more about how to use the Teach Access accessibility skills hiring toolkit and to recruit and hire accessibility skilled staff across a range of roles in your organization. And we'll kick the discussion off starting with Meena. Would each of you give us a brief introduction and say a little bit about your experience in hiring or being hired for accessibility skills? Meena?
Sure, I can go first. So hi, everybody. My name is Meena. I'm a software engineer at Microsoft. I think it's my 11th month there now. So I just joined a few months back. So I don't have a direct experience trying to hire people for accessibility skills, but I'm a software engineer who tries to use accessibility skills on a daily basis in my job. So my job is not directly related to accessibility, and I still make sure to use those skills in my job. So one of the things, if you see in the accessibility skills toolkit, is that you don't have to be an accessibility specialist to do accessibility work. You can be a software engineer or a content writer or a PM. So we all play, I think, an important part to make sure we have accessible products. So yeah, I'm so happy to be here, and thank you so much.
Cyndi?
Hello, Cyndi Wiley. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm glad to be here today, and I have hired for 2 positions in the past year and really relied on the accessibility skills hiring toolkit to inform how I wrote the job descriptions, and also in working with our HR team at Iowa State. We have 4,000 to 6,000 employees. So our HR department helps us out pretty well with guiding the process and in pointing them to the accessibility skills hiring toolkit. We were able to modify our job descriptions, and it became a conversation between HR and our department, which I'm in information technology services, of working to add some of these skills into other job descriptions as well. So that was just a bonus that happened in the hiring. So thank you very much.
Good bonus. Brittni, would you talk a little bit about your experiences?
Definitely. So hi, also happy to be here. My name is Brittni Wendling. I actually work with Cyndi here at Iowa State, and I serve kind of a dual role. So I'll have some different perspectives and experiences on this panel. So I have a full-time role as a digital accessibility specialist here at Iowa State, and I also am a graduate student as well. So I've kind of gotten to see the best of both worlds while kind of figuring out how the hiring perspective works when hiring others and focusing on accessibility skills, and also going through that process myself as a job seeker and a student. So happy to be here and share my experiences.
And Carrie, would you tell us a little bit about your experience in hiring or being hired for accessibility skills?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie Farber. I lead accessibility at Walmart eCommerce. Apologies, I'm not on video as we've had some unexpected technical difficulties. But I have been involved in hiring for accessibility candidates, both on my team as well as in our cross-functional teams. And it's been a great resource to access the accessibility skills hiring toolkit. And it's really important to include language in job descriptions, especially related to design, engineering, and product roles, to really let people know that it's an important focus for our company and to help candidates prepare to be successful in the role.
Thank you so much. And this is kind of an all-in question. Feel free, Carrie, we can lead off with you again. And where is your organization in the process of hiring staff with accessibility skills? Where are they now, and where would you like to see them be in the next year or so?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Walmart is a really large organization, and I would say that in pockets of our organization, we are actively including accessibility skills in specific roles. So for example, as I mentioned, I recently hired an end-to-end senior product manager, really focusing on accessibility, partnering with design and product and dev to really be that end-to-end expert and drive strategy in specific areas of our business. So in that case, the job description was largely focused on the importance of accessibility skills. We also, as I mentioned before, will partner with leaders in our design organization and development organization to think about ways that we can creatively insert accessibility language into developers or testers in terms of those roles, and also into our design roles. So I would say that we are definitely, we've kicked off the initiative, and it's definitely a work in progress today. And I hope that over the next 1 to 5 years, we will see this increase across more roles within the company, both within Walmart.com as well as the broader Walmart organization.
So I look to either Brittni or Cyndi talking about accessibility skills in higher ed. So, and of course, I know that each higher ed institution is a little bit different, but you can talk a little bit about how it is at Iowa State, or what you'd like to see. What you'd like to see. What would be your dream state of accessibility hiring skills? And this is for either Brittni or Cyndi, you can chime in.
Yeah, so for higher ed, fall outside of traditional industry a lot of times, but working on a staff side as well as the faculty, I see both aspects, and coming from industry has broadened my perspective, certainly when it comes to hiring. And for our organization, we are a work in progress, as I think a lot of organizations are, it will be. Our HR team is receptive, which is the first key to adding accessibility skills, and particularly within the information technology department. We are having conversations of writing our general job descriptions with some basic understanding of accessibility skills. And it can be difficult because a lot of programs in two-year colleges, four-year colleges, and universities just simply aren't covering accessibility. And so by listing that in a job description, the hope is that we can include some professional development along with anybody who might already have accessibility skills, but knowing that we may not get people that have general accessibility skills and being willing to onboard them.
And for both Meena and Brittni, as the two people close to coming from education, what kind of skills do you see need to be taught or need to be explored so that we can make students much more ready for the job market and come and be able to apply for those jobs that are including accessibility skills and descriptions?
I think from my perspective, I think there needs to be kind of a balance of technical accessibility skills as well as disability education and etiquette for interacting with folks with disabilities, things such as language and just more perspectives from folks who have disabilities themselves. So I think there needs to be kind of a dual-sided approach where we need to be preparing students and job seekers with the skills that they need to do the technical side of accessibility work, as well as interact with folks with disabilities on a day-to-day basis, is what I would say.
Meena, anything to add to that?
Sure. I think the one thing we need to be better at is just trying to make accessibility teaching not that one chapter at the end of your course. I guess one of the things what I've seen in schools and such boot camps too is that accessibility is taught, then it's just taught as a small chapter at the starting or the end of your course, but I don't think that is very helpful. I think accessibility teaching, it needs to be baked into the process of teaching from the start, so students know how exactly to use it instead of just talking about it. I think if we do that, students, they will be a lot more prepared for accessibility skills in the future. And I think they will also try to take accessibility more seriously. So I think that's important. Yeah.
Thank you. What ways do we think that we can expand the understanding of accessibility? It's one thing to say to HR, put this in your job description, but how are we educating hirers or hiring managers about the worth of accessibility, or what it even means? And again, this is an all-in question. If you feel free to chime in if you have an answer. We can lead off with Cyndi. No? Yes.
Sure. Yeah, so for people that are looking to hire and people that are looking for jobs, I think there are clues in the job description. So one thing that we're working with our HR department on is getting the so-called boilerplate information about inclusion and diversity that includes disability status, getting that also listed higher up in the job description so that we truly are focusing forward on wanting people with disabilities and being serious about that and serious enough to write about it in the job description. And so that's a big clue for job seekers as well, is what kind of attention does an organization, company, higher ed pay to hiring folks. And then what Meenakshi was saying about, not having enough curriculum yet included is really important as well. So some of the work that we're doing in collaboration with Teach Access, where Teach Access is leading, is working with some of the accrediting bodies for programs so that it could be a broad, widespread adding into existing curriculum about accessibility and about disability and disability studies. So both from a theory perspective and a praxis perspective of having a program that is inclusive all around and not just throwing stuff in here and there. And it's great to have things included, but at the beginning or at the end, not the best pedagogical approach for attention. And I think as students in higher ed and those attending boot camps can have a basic understanding of what accessibility is and what digital accessibility is and what it means, then we'll get further doing it as embedding into a curriculum.
And I'll throw it over to Carrie. Carrie, how do we get HR to understand what accessibility means, or some maybe are rather than just putting buzzwords in a description, how do we get them to really actually hire for accessibility skills?
I think there's a couple of different facets to this. So I think the more that we can partner closely with our HR recruiters, the better, to really help them understand the value that hiring talent with accessibility skill sets brings. And so what I mean by that is when we have talent that, comes in and they have knowledge of accessibility, universal design principles, WCAG guidelines, and just overall brings an accessibility first mindset to the product lifecycle, it really drives innovation, it brings unique perspectives, and it also drives efficiency when they can hit the ground running. Of course, there's onboarding and there's training to be done, but I think really helping our HR partners understand the value. And then also within that, just the value of hiring diverse talent. One of the best ways to drive an accessibility first culture is to hire people with disabilities. And so when we think about, again, showcasing the value, our commitment to inclusion and our commitment to, accessibility to drive products and services and experiences for everyone, it's really important that we add that language in, and not just the language, but also really think through, the hiring process and accessibility kind of beyond that job description. But I think there's ways. The other thing is really showing HR. So we've done, demos where we help people understand really what is accessibility, what is assistive technology, and then, leaving those conversations with here's how you can help.
Absolutely. And as job seekers or new students, how do you tell your classmates, or how do you tell your peers that sure, you only understand accessibility a very small portion? How do you encourage them to seek out the skills, especially given in light of Amina's comment that, it's just an add-on, right? So if it's just an add-on, maybe it's 0.005 of their total education, if at all. So what kinds of tools do you use to communicate with your peers that accessibility is important and it really does help them in the job market? And I can start with Brittni.
Sure, I was already unmuted, ready to go. I think from my perspective, a big thing that we can do as students and as the learners in the situation and people who are, going to be going into situations and looking to get hired. And the biggest thing I think is sharing your own perspectives and experiences, and always like keeping an open mind and being willing to have conversations with other people. So accepting that although someone you're having a conversation with right now may not be at a point where they understand accessibility and the importance that it holds in all aspects of the world, and especially just in hiring and in job focused roles itself, understanding that's where they're at and meeting them kind of where they're at currently, and just being open to putting that energy and that work into having those conversations with them and doing what you can while still maintaining like self-preservation, and knowing that sometimes not everyone is going to understand fully the importance, but just meeting people where they're at. And a big thing I think is just sharing your own experiences, providing resources, whatever that looks like for you and what you're currently doing.
Nina, for you?
Sure. I think Brittni's comment about sharing experiences is so important. I think me as a person who stutters, accessibility impacts me firsthand. For example, when I'm like trying to talk to a voice assistant or a speech-based program, it's not a very good experience for me, because it's not so patient and not very understanding of what I'm trying to like speak all the time. So I think I just try to share my experiences as a person who stutters, of like how accessibility, it can just not benefit me, then everybody. For example, if you just had a dentist appointment and you can't talk that well, and improved speech or the recognition system it is going to help you to not just a person who stutters. So I think it's like important to spread the mindset that accessibility is just not for people with disabilities. It benefits everybody, and we have examples of captions, of curb cuts, and just, yeah, I think accessibility is important for everybody. Yeah.
So we understand the importance of accessibility, and we understand how that we've talked a little bit about how we can increase the number of people, our need to increase the number of people with accessibility skills in our organizations. So one of the tools that we offer is, of course, the Accessibility Skills Hiring Toolkit. And why, if any of you have had experience using the toolkit or have been a job seeker, looking at the toolkit from the job seeker perspective, why do you think that what does this toolkit offer? Do you think that would be beneficial to organizations? And I'll start with Carrie on this one.
The toolkit offers not only a framework on kind of how to look at different job descriptions and some of the language that can be used, but it also gives, as I just mentioned, exact examples that can be leveraged into job descriptions across multiple companies or be edited and altered to really fit the needs of a particular job description. So I think for organizations who may be just getting started or particular partners, within a team that aren't as familiar with accessibility, it's a really great resource to point someone to so that they can actually see what this looks like to include this type of messaging into a job description. And I think if we look at some of the examples, as I mentioned, you can leverage them directly, or you can actually see that there are ways to look at an existing job requisition or description within your organization and just add a couple of a sentence at the end, or even just a couple of words. I'll give a quick example. We may have a bullet when we're hiring for product owners, looking for ideal candidates who have experience in conducting discovery, gap analysis, creating requirements, and partnering effectively with other product owners, designers, and developers. And by simply adding at the end of that sentence, partnering with other product owners, designers, and developers to drive inclusive and accessible products, it actually makes that sentence more inclusive and really highlights the need for accessible skill sets. So just to wrap up, the toolkit, it is a great resource. I think it helps people who are just getting started, as well as those who have a variety of different types of job openings, truly understand how to add that language in.
Absolutely, I see the usefulness, especially as an aid to help hirers. And I'll actually hop it over for the other side. Do either Meenakshi or Brittni, do you have a perspective of the toolkit and have a perspective of the toolkit from a job seeker side or from a using it to prepare side?
I feel like I definitely do. So from a student and a job seeker perspective, I think the toolkit is very helpful for those of us like myself who have known from a different, earlier point in our life that we wanted a career focused on digital accessibility. We want to be able to learn these accessibility skills. And this is really the path that we want to take when, looking at jobs to apply for. So I think the toolkit does a good job at kind of giving me direct, tangible bullet points to look at and focus on when seeing what kind of skills I can build into my knowledge base as it currently stands, what I should be looking forward to learning more about, what I should be researching, what types of things I should be educating myself on to prepare myself for accessibility focused role. So I think that it gives kind of that baseline summary of what I should be looking for in order to be successful for when I would move to the next step of actually looking for roles.
Meena, I'll ask you to chime in if you have anything to add.
Sure. I think the one thing that the toolkit it really highlights is that accessibility it is everybody's job. I think a few years back, and I didn't know so much about accessibility. I just thought that there is this one accessibility specialist who takes care of the accessibility things in your product or in your organization. This, I think this the toolkit just really shows that accessibility is part of everybody's job. It's just not one accessibility specialist who should take care of these things. So, and I think that is so very important because we all play a part in ensuring that we make accessible experiences. And I think another thing is that when I see accessibility skills included as a part of a job description, I think I just feel, I guess, the more charged to apply for the job because me as a person who identifies as a disability advocate, I'm like trying to seek the jobs where I can make an impact. So seeing these job descriptions, trying to make accessibility such a high priority, at least to me, I think I will tend to apply to that job more because I'm searching for ways to make a difference. So it's a great opportunity for me to do so. So yeah.
Thank you. And Cyndi, I'm going to stitch together a couple of things that Meena said and a couple of things that Carrie said, and something that you mentioned from the beginning. You said, higher ed is kind of a little bit different from industry, and we have several different strata, right? So we have faculty who may or may not know about accessibility. We have staff. And so across the organization, how does the toolkit you see really benefit or aid in getting accessibility skills across? And the part that I'm stitching together from Meena is that moving away from that one central department that fixes everything accessibility model.
Yeah, that's the hard part, is to move beyond that model. And so in higher ed, to have faculty positions listed with some attention to accessibility is really important, yet we're not doing it as of yet. I know some institutions that are, but getting that widespread buy-in is really about general awareness about the need for accessibility, inclusion in not just our physical locations. Those are really important as not creating a barrier for somebody to get around, but also in our digital infrastructure as well, and having those match. One of the things from the toolkit that's really nice, so we certainly, that the job descriptions are there as a starter for the language that you can use for reference, but also for interviewing. And so for interviewing, having questions that you can ask of folks that are in the interview process. In academia, we have a lot of committees that will interview together, and having a lead for a committee, a search committee chair, something of that nature, to walk everyone else through what accessibility expectations are. If your institution or organization has a digital accessibility policy or a statement, educating about that aspect and how it might affect the job position. And also just interviewing best practice of sending out the interview questions beforehand. I try and do it at least 48 hours prior. A week is better, but with procrastination, I trying to be aware of giving a couple of days advance notice of, here's what the interview committee is going to ask. We may not get to every question, but we don't really want to stray too far away from this, because our society here in the States really places value on folks that can think really quickly and can discuss really in a manner that is aligned with somebody who is super outgoing. And for particular positions, you may not need to be super outgoing to be successful in that position. For somebody with like myself with anxiety issues, it's so helpful to have questions ahead of time that I can prepare and look over and be able to alter, but I'll have a general idea of what's going on. And for a college campus who is big on quizzes and testing and exams, my hope is to kind of get away from some of that, depending on what discipline is being represented, but certainly with how we are interviewing and how we are educating each other to get beyond just the one department that's responsible is important, and takes a lot of work. It takes resources and lots of education.
Yes. One tiny little point, and again, this is kind of an all-in, and for Meenakshi and Brittni, Cyndi and Carrie, I will ask, when we ask the questions, or the toolkit does a great job of providing some suggested questions. How do we help educate people as to the range of answers, rather than having people just use buzzwords and put things in their resume? How do we help people really add meaning to the skill, to the toolkit, or to the skills? It's one thing to have the skills. Do we know how to have the tools? Do you know how to use them? So what kinds of ways can we enable our hiring committees, or our HR partners, however we do it? What kinds of things can we do to enable them to critically listen to their answers and hire people with accessibility skills? And again, I can start with Brittni, if you'd like to lead us off on this one.
I think a big thing would be the power of leading by example, right? So if we are wanting HR partners and people who are going to be on these hiring committees to really understand what they're listening for and put emphasis on the answers that folks are giving, I think providing adequate training and scenarios is a big first step. So I think having the general templates and the questions is kind of a good baseline, but we have to go one step further, and maybe that looks like practicing holding, events where we practice with HR folks and we discuss what kind of answers people might give, what to look for, providing that general sense of awareness. And here are some ways answers might come across, or here is kind of like picking apart the good in how people answer questions. So I'm not quite sure, there's many different formats of how that could look. That's also an accessibility principle. So that could be in real time, face-to-face. It could be, recording videos or doing webinars with folks. But I mean, that's the first step, is just adequate training and training the folks that are going to be doing that process, I think.
Hop over to Carrie for a perspective on that.
Thanks. Yeah, I think there's a couple of different ways to approach it as well. So when we are interviewing specifically for accessibility skills, we will often, ask questions and then also incorporate scenarios. And then for some of the more technical related roles, we will actually have an exercise. We may screen share and ask someone to actually walk through how they would evaluate this particular page and how they would go about testing it, not only in their framework and approach, but actually identifying any findings they may have and how they would actually fix it. So I think this combination of, questions with real-time exercises, or I know some companies will have candidates prepare a presentation or do an exercise, really helps us confirm if the skill sets can actually be translated into actions, whether it be for our engineering roles or our design roles. And I think a couple of ways that we help influence, clearly it's not always possible to have an accessibility subject matter expert as part of every interview, but we often try to, think through how might we provide an exercise that's simple but yet detailed enough to truly assess a candidate and give a hiring manager or an HR partner the high level of what we would be looking for and what acceptable answers would be.
Meena, over to you.
Sure. I think the one point Brittni mentioned is just trying to train the people who are going to do these interviews is so important. Then I think another thing to keep in mind is the same concept of trying to bake accessibility in your interview process from the start, rather than just like trying to ask 2, 3 accessibility questions at the end is very important too. I think of when you just do the latter approach, it's not that helpful. I don't think you learn anything about the candidate skills by just trying to ask them 2 or 3 accessibility related questions. Then if you do keep accessibility in the mind from the start of the interview, it can be more useful to gauge their skills of, like, say, of example, if it's a design level interview, so like how would you try to design something with accessibility in mind from the start? So yeah, these are some of my thoughts which just came. Yeah.
Thank you. And Cyndi, to bring us home on that, we can start with the accessibility toolkit and how do we make it more meaningful? It's a toolkit. How do we make sure that it's built in? If you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, so it's a toolkit, it's a place to start. It's an example to utilize and pass along and talk about. And it's really important to also is that everybody's sharing way, and if people and so how we motivate.
So let me stop here. Cyndi, your connection is pixelated and we can't clearly hear you. So I will pause here and we really do want to hear your answer. So I'll actually just go quickly. We have 1 minute, and I'll actually ask Leslie or our moderator, our host, do we have any questions from the audience before we wrap up?
Yes, thank you. I don't see any questions right now, but one just came in, so I spoke just a second too soon. This question says, as a prospective job seeker from outside of the career of technology, what suggestions do you have for me as I begin the job search? I will graduate with an ED doctorate in instructional design and technology next summer. Are there good entry-level positions to look for?
And Cyndi, if you're back with us, I'll throw that out to you.
Yeah, I think I am back. And Brittni, I saw that you were unmuted as well. So Brittni spent some time working with our instructional design team here at Iowa State. So if you're graduating with a doctorate degree in instructional design and technology, I guess depending if you're going to be teaching with that degree, or if you are looking for an instructional design. And the Alley Jobs website is a good place to look. Those
Oh, and
where
Cyndi,
you
it
want
looks,
to be.
I say your connection cut out just a bit again. I don't know, Brittni, if you wanted to add anything.
Sure. So like Cyndi said, Alley Jobs would be a good place to start. It's an amazing resource, lots to find. And then even just, you know, focusing on LinkedIn, doing some quick searches there. I think one thing just from my experience that has been helpful and is the way that I actually got connected with Cyndi is just researching and finding folks who are doing what I know I want to be doing and reaching out to them. So whether that's a cold email, a LinkedIn request, just don't be afraid to make those connections and let people use their networks to help connect you and get you to where you need to be, is what I would say.
Carrie, from industry, any instructional design technology with accessibility skills, tips for hiring?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
So from industry, we talked a little bit about higher ed. So our questioner asked about instructional design technology. From industry, is there a need for people with instructional design technology and accessibility skills?
I think in the industry, yes, I think it depends. I mean, there are many companies and some companies have a greater need than others. But I definitely think that there are applicable skills.
Great. Any other questions from our attendees?
There was just a sort of piggyback off of that question with a similar question asking about internships. Any suggestions on how to find a great internship?
So even though I'm not a panelist, I'll add in here. A lot of times internships don't even know they need accessibility. And so you bring accessibility skills to the internship that you have applied, and lives are changed, doors are opened, new things can happen. So while looking for accessibility focused internship seems a very specific niche, broadening the conversation to bringing your own accessibility skills to your internship really helps show your value to the internship that you're bringing. And I'll stop there and throw it out to any of our panelists who would like to add and maybe say a little bit more on that.
I would say from my perspective, so I would focus on broadening your search a little bit. So instead of just focusing on accessibility geared positions, like what Samantha had said, really focus on the value that you bring and infuse your knowledge into that role in that space. So even if it doesn't look like that initially and you get the internship, there's always space and room to infuse your skills and knowledge and what you can add to that role, and then it will take shape and you'll be able to hopefully do more accessibility focused work from there. So just piggybacking on what you had said, Samantha.
Any other questions from Leslie or any comments from Meena, Carrie, or Cyndi on?
There's no other question. I know Meena did put another great resource in the chat. Lyme Connect is an organization for students and recent grads with disabilities and is a great for job search and network. But any other last minute questions? I will also just add, and I was gonna say this in closing, is just to follow Teach Access on LinkedIn and Twitter, because we're often told about job opportunities or internships. So we like to share those out on social media. So if you follow us there, we can definitely, maybe introduce you to something. And there was one other question that came in. What things do you do in your role to push the dial on accessibility without causing friction? So I know that's a big question, so I don't know if anyone has a quick answer.
Yes, it will have to be 15 seconds or less because we're almost at time and I do want to wrap up with our panelists. So yes, what things can we do to move the needle on accessibility without causing friction? Anyone?
Stay persistent and hold your ground, recognize it's important. And I think causing a little bit of friction is okay. That's my brief answer.
Nina?
Yes, and Cyndi had a similar response in the chat to cause friction for change to happen.
I will say help people see the why.
I think just the one tangible way it is to seek support from your company's disability employee resource group if you have one. I think you will find a lot of like-minded people there who share the same passion as you do. That has definitely helped me my journey. So yeah.
I'd like to thank our panelists. This has been a really enlightening discussion, and I hope that our attendees have taken away a little bit about things, small actionable items they can do to increase DEI, digital equity, and inclusion into their organizations across the board. This is a wonderful part of Global Accessibility Awareness Day, but the work doesn't end here. It's all year round, and every little step you can take to make your property, your inclusion, your digital accessibility inclusive is a drop in the bucket, but it is something that is so needed and necessary. So thank you all, and I just continue to push forward on Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Thanks again to our Teach Access crew and certainly to our interpreters. And back to you, Leslie.
Thank you so much. Thank you, panelists and Samantha and interpreters, and thank you all for attending. We put some information in the chat about how to stay in touch, so please stay in touch and let us know if you have any questions or anything at all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
We appreciate your continued support. For more information, please visit our website at teachaccess.org or check us out on Twitter and LinkedIn with handle @teachaccess.